Unit 49, The Natural World. This unit is about the natural world and about the extremes of temperature and weather you can experience. We also meet an explorer who has travelled in extremes of temperature in different parts of the world. Exercise 2. Listen and check. Here is the correct order of temperatures.
Freezing. Very cold. Chilly.
Cool, mild, warm.
Fairly hot. Very hot. Extremely hot. Boiling.
Exercise 3. Listen and read. Here are some ways of talking about temperature and weather.
Temperatures will drop to 7 degrees Celsius tonight.
This jacket is suitable for sub-zero temperatures.
You get extremes of heat and cold in the desert.
The temperature is now 67 degrees Fahrenheit.
It was 25 degrees below zero.
The temperature was over 40 degrees Celsius.
Exercise 5. Listen and read. And now some ways of comparing temperatures.
This is the coldest place I've ever been to.
I've never been anywhere hotter than this.
It's not as cold as it was last week.
It's much colder than it was last week.
It's a lot warmer than it was this time last year.
Exercise 6. Listen and write. We asked 4 people to describe the hottest or the coldest places they had been to.
Coldest place is Helsinki in midwinter, and I think it was -20.
Oh, I lived in Madras, India for almost 3 years, and it was extremely hot there.
The coldest would probably be parts of northern Russia, when it was -26, -27. It may not be cold for the locals, but it felt very cold indeed to me.
The hottest place I've ever been to is the deserts of New Mexico in the United States, where it can get up to 40 degrees centigrade quite often. But it's a dry heat, and you don't feel it quite so much.
Exercise 7. Listen and answer. What temperatures have Natalie and David experienced?
The hottest place I've ever been to is India. When I was there, the temperature was over 40 degrees Celsius. However, I did spend most of my time in air-conditioned hotels.
The coldest place I've ever been to is Sweden. When I was there, it was 25 degrees below zero. Although it didn't feel cold, because it was sunny and it wasn't windy. And, of course, there was central heating everywhere.
Exercise 8. Listen and check. 2 bears are on holiday.
Oh, it's freezing.
What?
It's freezing. I can't put up with this at all.
Oh, it's not as cold as last year.
What? I think it's much colder than last year.
No, it isn't. Although I admit the wind is a bit stronger. Come on, let's go for a swim.
A swim? Here? You must be joking. The water's like ice.
It's not. It's a lot warmer than last year. Come on.
I'm not a very good swimmer.
Of course you are. You swim much better than I do.
Exercise 9. Listen and read.
I know he's taking the 10:10 train because that's what he said. I believe the train gets in at 12:15. Or is it 12:30? I hope the train is on time, otherwise he'll miss the match.
Exercise 11. Now over to Matt Dickinson, an explorer. Listen and answer the questions.
I believe that I've travelled about 1 million miles in my travelling career since 1976, and every single one of them has been a great pleasure and of fantastic interest to me. Last year, I was fortunate enough to be invited to join an expedition to cross the Namib Desert in southwest Africa. And it took me into extremes of heat that I've never encountered before.
We're 115 degrees.
115?
Check it out.
In the shade.
Exercise 12. Listen and read the sentences.
The decision we made was to spend the summer in France. What we did was to put the car on a ferry. All that was left was to book the tickets. We were lucky to have very good weather. What I've never done is to put my car on a plane.
Exercise 13. Listen and complete. How do you walk for 5.5 days in one of the hottest deserts of the world?
Our journey was 5.5 days from start to finish, and we had to carry an enormous quantity of water to enable us to survive. It's a bit like carrying a refrigerator on your back. Yeah. It's that sort of weight. Now, the decision we made was to walk for 2 or 3 hours in the morning and 2 or 3 hours in the late afternoon, and then rest through the rest of the day underneath a space blanket. And what we did was to stretch it between a rock surface and the desert floor, and then shelter underneath it in the shade for the hottest part of the day. In that place, nothing can survive. We walked through a great forest, and one associates trees with leaves and shade and life and energy, and all that was left were the skeletons of the trees, just the simple bare branches. It was an eerie and rather intimidating place.
Exercise 14. Listen and read. Matt tells us about travelling down one of the most dangerous rivers of the world.
One of the most frightening moments I think I've ever had came when I was invited to join an American and Indian team on the Brahmaputra River, which is a whitewater river. It comes crashing out of the Himalayas. It's extremely turbulent and full of rocks, and at some stages you can see no blue water at all. It's completely white and very, very dangerous. The objective was to raft for 120 miles down the river on a stretch of the river that, as far as we knew, had never been rafted before. And it began at a very remote village right on the border of China and India. We set off, and for several days it would be true to say that our expedition was almost completely out of control. There's a limit to the amount of maneuverability of a small rubber raft when it's being tossed from wave to wave in the grip of a ferocious river like the Brahmaputra.
Exercise 17. Listen and check. How do the dangers of the desert compare with the dangers of a whitewater river?
There are many differences between the desert and the savage and frightening forces of a whitewater river. The desert is not as terrifying. The river has a great deal of noise. There's the rushing of the water, there's the grinding and rumbling of great rocks, perhaps the size of a house, as they are pushed underneath the surface of the river downstream by the force of the water. But each place has its own dangers, and each place can be life-threatening if things go wrong. And I think that's the fascinating thing about extremes of environment, that the heat, the aridity, the all-embracing oven of the desert is just as dangerous as the savage forces of a whitewater river. But to be in that environment is a completely different experience, and it requires a completely different approach, both mentally and physically, in order to survive.